What's going on, everyone? I'm Jason.
And I'm Grizz.
And welcome back to Vital MTB's Summer of Downhill. So far this summer, we've tested 3 bikes with various wheel size configurations, component specs, price points, and frame materials. And if we have learned anything thus far, it's that no matter the brand, modern downhill bikes are incredibly capable machines with marginal differences separating each of them. With so many awesome bikes to choose from, riders can truly select a downhill bike based off of unique characteristics to best suit their riding style. So we've got 2 bikes left to test this summer. Let's go ahead and keep this party rolling. Next up, rolling on 27.5 wheels, a full aluminum frame, and again offered by a consumer direct brand, is YT TUES Comp. YT's TUES downhill bike has existed in their lineup for over 10 years, but was most recently updated in 2018, spearheaded by input from Aaron Gwynn and his mechanic John Hall. Based on their feedback, suspension tweaks to YT's V4L 4-bar linkage design sought to lower ending stroke progression while increasing mid-stroke support. The goal was to achieve a more supple and compliant suspension platform over fast and rough terrain. Anti-rise values were increased by 15% to improve stability and traction under braking, while anti-squat values remained high to keep the suspension supported for improved pedaling efficiency. Additionally, the TUES has always had a lower leverage rate due to the long 89mm stroked shock. This allows for more precise suspension tuning and increased oil volume in the damper for consistent shock performance as temperatures change. Other frame improvements include full compliant dual row pivot bearings with pivot hardware entering from the non-drive side. This change improved both durability and ease of maintenance on the TUES. Frame protection was also beefed up with the addition of a removable plastic down tube and bottom bracket protector, as well as a molded chainstay protector. Lastly, cable routing was moved internally with secure cable plugs to limit any noise. In the end, the frame updates made in 2018 produced a much more elegant TUES frame that boasts sweeping lines and smooth edges compared to previous frame iterations. There are no geometry adjustments present on the TUES, which does make setup easy, but also limits how much tinkering riders have at their disposal. YT offers their 27.5-inch wheel TUES in 2 build kit options. We tested the entry-level TUES Comp, which retails for $3,499 US. The Comp build kit is highlighted by Fox 40 Performance Elite fork, Fox Float X2 Performance rear shock, SRAM GX 7-speed drivetrain, Travative descendant cranks, E13 LG1 DH aluminum wheels, and Maxxis Assegai 3C max grip tires front and rear. Other noteworthy components include an SDG I-beam seat post and YT co-branded SDG iFly 2.0 saddle. There's also Raceface Atlas 35 cockpit and ODI Elite Motion grips. Most of our test bikes so far this summer have used house-branded contact point components, so it's refreshing seeing an entry-level build kit rocking aftermarket parts. YT's premier TUES Pro Race build retails for $5,999 US and is built around their carbon frame option. The Pro Race build kit is highlighted by Fox Float factory suspension, SRAM X01 drivetrain, and E13 LG1 carbon downhill wheels. In 2019, YT did launch their TUES 29 frame, which uses its own unique geometry to accommodate 29-inch wheels. The TUES 29 is only sold as a carbon frame with the higher-end Pro Race build kit retailing for the same $5,999 US. Riders purchasing any TUES build will also receive a YT toolbox, which will include all necessary tools to assemble your bike. Since receiving our TUES Comp test bike, YT has adjusted the build spec and name of their entry-level TUES model. Still retailing for the same $3,499 US, the new TUES base build kit uses the same aluminum frame and shares identical components as our test bike, except for the switch to RockShox's Boxer Select fork and RockShox's Vivid R2C coil shock. Our review will still consist of discussing how our TUES performed with the suspension it came with, as we do not feel the differences in component spec are drastic enough to alter the characteristics or performance of the bike. To match our 2 test rider heights of 5'10" and 6 foot, YT provided a size extra large TUES Comp. With a 474mm reach, this is the largest downhill bike we will test this summer. Combined with its 440mm chainstays, the total wheelbase taps out at a generous 1,278mm. Why did we go with the size extra large TUES? While all the downhill bikes we've tested thus far have been a size large, The size large 2S Comp is too small for our test riders with only a 453 millimeter reach. We opted for the size extra large as often it is easier to shorten reach via stem length than it is to increase the reach via headset cups. Plus, the descent-focused nature of downhill riding is often aided by a longer and more stable bike. Due to YT's consumer direct model limiting opportunity to test ride and ensure fitment of a YT bike, it is worth noting that YT operates an extensive demo tour within the United States. In case you purchased the incorrect size or are unhappy with your YT bike, they do offer a 14-day return policy. Return bikes must be unridden in new condition and repackaged the same as the bike was received, and signs of wear or cosmetic damage will result in an adjusted refund amount. How was your take on riding a 474 millimeter reach bike?
Ooh, yeah, it was a struggle personally. I compensated the whole time riding the bike, and I can't discredit YT for anything. There were parts of the bike where I could, like the rear suspension tracking and all that good stuff. I felt minimal weakness back there, but I was just struggling to be like proper weight displacement between the wheels. I was, just too far forward, too far back. If you're 5'10" or shorter, I would not recommend an XL.
Would you though go to the large, which is right around like a 450 mil reach? That's under, most of the bikes you've ridden are right around kind of 460. It's not huge. Do you think it was easier for you to compensate for the longer reach? Or do you think you'd have a better time riding slightly smaller bike and maybe like, I don't know, going like a 50 mil stem?
Great question. And I would have to guesstimate that I would be better suited on the size large.
Okay.
I know how to, I come from a 26-inch era, I know what tight reach, cockpits feel like, so I can just get off the back a little bit. But yeah, the reach for me on the XL was just so long that I identified that I couldn't ride this bike through the paces that it's capable of. I could feel that it was capable of doing way more than I was willing to do.
For me, I'm right like maybe a little bit over 6 foot. I didn't find that it was too big in a negative way. The only time that came into hand was when like kind of started losing the reins on it and I was getting a little out of control, and I was like, oh, it's gonna take more for me to like reel this back in than another bike. Definitely felt super fast. Like the size and stability through rough stuff. We'll get into the suspension, but just like me being planted on the bike, I was like, oh, I can just run into things like really fast. I've kind of always gone up in bar height, like with all the other bikes we've ridden. And this one I actually went down. Like I moved the stanchions up in the crowns a hair, just because like when it started getting up and then it's like the reach is longer, like I was just like, felt like I was going backwards. A little bit lower felt good, and like I was a fan of the bars. I think are only like an 8-degree back sweep. Yeah. Just kind of my rider triangle felt real solid on this. So
for me, I had to roll the bars back to an extreme just to get a little bit better fitment. I was trying to get my hands kind of in line with the steer tube or even slightly behind it, just to tighten up the cockpit.
It's interesting sizing. Bikes are getting longer and getting bigger, and I think you and I both coming from like a 26-inch wheeled past, we can get away with riding smaller bikes. It feels more natural. Yeah. Going into the fact that they're consumer direct, like does create, you're gonna wanna like look at numbers a bit more because you don't have the opportunity to go into a shop and test ride it. YT does like a demo tour, non-COVID-y times, they have that going on. So you can go on their website, figure out where the closest stop is to you and try to get one or get on one because, I think I still would pick an XL, but for somebody like you, if you were to pick it based on the numbers, you'd probably be like, oh crap, that's way too big.
Yeah. Kind of like the unhappy Goldilocks in the YT sizing department.
Totally.
One's too long, one's too short.
All right, well, we touched on sizing and kind of like each of us balancing out the little bit longer reach. How did you set up suspension on the 2S?
Yeah, so suspension setup was a bit different than previous bikes that we've ridden. So for me, I rode the YT before the Canyon. So this was me getting back to dual 27.5 wheels again. And the first thing I noticed was, wow, this front end feels so much lower. And I wanted so in an effort to kind of keep my ride height a little higher, I went with a firmer fork pressure. So I went from 95 PSI, and I think I was running 82 on the pivot. And then a little bit less compression, and I just tried to get the compression and rebound even. So I ran less compression damping, but more PSI in the air can. That gave me a good ride height, so I didn't feel like I was the front end was dipping,
Yep.
you know, when I'm at the end of my ropes, just compensating. And then the shock, I set to my weight, and then I just like through G19, I just backed the low speed compression off 2 clicks and sped up rebound 2 clicks, and that felt sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, just good, active, ample traction. Man, the mid-stroke support and bottom-out support is fantastic on the YT.
Totally.
What'd you do with suspension?
Yes, I mean, I rode it after you. I went down in pressure. I think I was kind of settled on about 65 PSI in the fork and then 180 in the shock. And that was just personal preference for balance. Like the fork, I believe, we didn't change tokens. It came with 4, shock came with 2 bottom out tokens in it. And I kind of did the same. Like the suspension, I feel like it was working well enough and supported enough that I kind of ran compression fairly open. Kind of rather just like leave my suspension open and not having to fight through, you know, having like compression closed off.
Yeah.
Rebound, I didn't do anything to like compensate for the way the bike was acting. Kind of just set it how I wanted. I think rebound of the fork was neutral. I believe the shock was maybe a little bit quick just to kind of deal with like tracking better on like our looser kind of chopped up stuff. The fork performed super well. Like I'm a fan of these like mid-level suspension products we've been riding.
So am I.
The Performance X2 is definitely very impressive, like as an air shock. I think it matched this bike really well. It kind of helped take away a little bit of the added weight from a full aluminum frame, but the kind of like you were saying, the mid to like ending stroke support was really good. This bike felt really quick, whether it was like a bike park flow trail or like G19 where you kind of get those like repetitive compressions. I wasn't cycling through travel in a bad way. I was kind of staying in like that real supported feel. I know you were talking about like some feel through your feet, and I definitely still had that on this, similar to the Canyon, but I actually don't think I noticed as much feedback in my feet as I did on the Canyon. This bike felt like the edge was a little bit more taken off.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I felt the YT had a slight edge over the Canyon for that small bump compliance, or just feedback into your feet.
I was stoked on it. I was impressed for just like another, I mean, 4-bar isn't simple, but it's very used across a lot of bikes and a lot of platforms. I was stoked how this felt in kind of a lot of different situations. How was your experience jumping it? Because this thing's huge. Let's go to like, this is kind of a race bike. How was it having fun on it for you?
You know, it was a struggle for me to, again, because I was just so all over the place on the bike, and you know, so my pop was non-existent on this bike.
For size or for suspension?
For size. So the suspension, like the rear end, you'd feel it load up, and it would provide a good pop.
Yep.
But I would load up the rear end, and I'd be, you know, arms fully stretched out,
looking through the crowns.
What am I doing? Now I need a throttle to pull me back forward.
Yeah.
This bike for me felt best in a straight line, going as fast as I could.
Yep. I would agree. That was the same for me. And like, even though I have a slightly longer like arm span to kind of manage this bike, I still felt on jump stuff that it was fun to ride on. The size was a factor, making it a bit more to manage. I wasn't like the Canyon. I was just like pulling off of stuff and like jumping to hillsides and doing little cutties. Wasn't happening with this. I mean, the chainstays are kind of like a normal 440 mil, but that's still on the longer side for a chainstay. It was great for descending purposes, very stable, but yeah, riding in jumps and hitting berms and all that stuff, it was a very like safe feeling. I don't think it would be my first choice to go just ride bike park stuff. Even if I were to go to large personally, I just don't think it has enough lively character for me, so. So now that we're handful of bikes in this summer, we've definitely ridden kind of the same components across a few different bikes. What stood out to you on this bike? Any thoughts just about like the build in general?
Well, so there's a lot of positives. YT did a great job speccing this bike, in my opinion. Huge fan, and like I personally own the GX drivetrain. Cranks were solid, great firm feel. The suspension, probably the highlight of the build for me. The tires are, this Ascai tire is my new favorite. You know, riding some of the other bikes without it made me appreciate the Ascai even more. So the saddle, that SDG saddle is a great choice. No tire buzz issues, which is fantastic. The brakes were powerful. I personally like SRAM brakes. I know they're not for everyone. Great modulation, plenty of power. Yeah, very minimal weakness with the parts on this bike.
It makes it hard to like talk about it a little bit, because I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, it all, like I start thinking about, I'm like, I could just talk about everything on it because it all felt really good. We'll do things that were like a little bit different on this build. I was stoked to see an SDG saddle because a lot of the kind of mid-entry level bikes when riding come with that brand's own cockpit, saddle, kind of just almost like off-branded parts. So it's rad to get like a very, you're getting an I-beam saddle and post, very downhill looking.
Yeah.
They're not the most comfortable, but it looks
It's
freaking bitchin',
built for
like,
racing.
Exactly, it looks fast. Same with like the race face cockpit. I mean, they are spec'd and OEM on like a lot of bikes, but it wasn't just a YT handlebar. And I enjoyed it. I know I harped on the Canyon with having a 6-bolt stem. Kind of had the same situation with this where to take off the stem, you're going to be losing bar roll. But yeah, other than that, I mean, suspension was definitely a standout. I'm a huge fan of the Performance X2. Drivetrain, I mean, GX drivetrain, I really don't know what else I would run on my downhill bike, my own personal bike. My only knock, which was I'm really reaching to find something, is having Kodar brakes because you don't have that contact adjust. It's a small thing, but as you burn through, likely your rear pads first, your lever throw gets a little bit closer to the bar. E13 wheels, I've seen a lot of people just out in life riding have issues with them, but I had no problems with them.
Yeah, agreed. I know a lot of people that have had issues, and so I was kind of excited to ride the E13 wheels, just knowing that there's some people that have a sour opinion about them. But yeah, they're true. They didn't ding. We didn't do any damage to these wheels. So
and the hub, like, I don't know how many points of engagement it has, but it has enough to have a nice ring to it.
Yeah,
like
great
engagement.
engagement.
It sounds a little bit higher end than the price you're getting this for. Let's touch on the headset because we hated the Acros headset with the Canyon. And this is basically the same one, and it's been flawless. So maybe the Canyon gets like a slight pass, and we just got kind of a bunk headset. But I don't know. It could also be like the actual tolerances with something going on, something's off. But on this bike, there was no problems with it. So the 2S does not have any geometry adjustments, which personally I'm kind of a fan of. I think it's a knock for people who want to have options with the bike when they get it, as a lot of bikes come with it these days, but I didn't feel like I really want to change anything. You probably would have done good with some like little offset headset cups to make it a little smaller, but like, and that's to say too that their higher end carbon version also does not have any geometry adjustment.
Yeah, they feel confident in what they've done, and
it's like a slippery slope sometimes.
Yeah.
Going like with so many options to adjust things. One thing I definitely like on this bike, and you can see it clearly right now, is how a lot of the pivot hardware pulls out on the non-drive side. So I just like how simple it looks and makes it pretty straightforward for maintenance.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's internally routed, which I love, and there was no rattling from, but where it enters in the head tube, those little rubber grommets are a little old school nowadays. And I mean, as I'm looking at it right now, they're not into the frame at all. I've tried pushing them a bunch of times to like stay, and just as it turns, they start to pull out. So small little issue. I mean, you could almost just not run them if you're maybe not riding in wet conditions, but.
Well, I'll back it up with a compliment though, because I did mount a race plate to this bike. This bike, the YT, was easier and had a cleaner number plate mount system than the Trek did, for sure. So
again, on an entry-level build, to have it, you can see where the cables dive out for a moment, but other than that, they're fully internal, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
If that's what you're into.
Yeah.
I know it's not necessarily your thing.
Well, the main thing for me is if it's going to be internally routed, it needs to be quiet, and YT nailed that. It's quiet.
Totally. I think we should do like more of an apples to apples comparison with the Canyon, because first few bikes we did, people kept bringing up consumer direct brands to compare to like the Trek and the Pivot. It's not really, it's not fair. You're not comparing the same things.
Yeah.
What's kind of your take on, do you think you're getting a better value with one of them?
I think you get a better value out of the YT simply because the suspension performance is so good. You have way more adjustability with that air shock. The Fox 40 versus the Marzocchi 58, there's not a whole lot of difference in feel, but you do have those little burp valves on the back, so that's going to help keep your small bump sensitivity better between weekends or transport, what have you, if you have one of those vertical mount racks. Aside from that, it's almost exactly the same part spec, a little bit different wheels. But I do think because the suspension performance is so outstanding, the YT is a better deal.
Totally. That's exactly my thought. For $100 more with this, $3,500 over $3,400 for the Canyon Sender, you're not going to be able to put $100 towards something to make the suspension better on the Canyon. And not that it wasn't good, but I share the same feeling. Like the tunability with that air shock and how good it feels really makes this kind of stand out for me. I think really only thing for people to weigh out is that Sender was very much so a bike park bike. This is a race bike. So
yeah,
you're kind of getting, I mean, I guess it's cool in the sense that, you have two options there with very kind of different intended uses. And you got $100 between the two. Makes it sort of easy to figure out what you might want. There will already be at this part in the video, we'll have the editor's note that the bike that we have tested is not exactly we can go purchase anymore from YT. Yeah. So we have the 2S Comp. The 2S base is what has replaced this. Same price point. Just a few changes in spec. The main one being the change to RockShox suspension. So you're getting RockShox, exact same level of suspension as Fox. You're having a coil shock in the rear now, but it has the same low speed compression and rebound. Forks the same low speed and rebound as well as air. So it's like you're getting same level components, but I might make the argument that the Fox stuff on this is definitely better. So the value drops a little bit with the new base 2S. Something to take in mind, just with COVID and everything going on, we are testing the bike that was available at that time. This bike probably is still available somewhere out there or somewhere used, and there's nothing that keeps you from building it up exactly where you rode it. You could buy the base 2S and basically just swap out the same suspension. You'd be riding what we had. And I don't think either the changes in components take away from like the abilities of the bike. You're not gonna buy the new one and it's gonna be like way crappier on the trail.
Yeah.
So.
Who is this bike for?
I think this is for like your racer. When I kind of look at all the bikes you've ridden this summer, the Trek Session's at the top of my list for like my next race bike, and I think this is right below it. I think this might take a little bit of advantage over the Trek because the Trek is like such a race bred bike.
Yeah.
I think I could maybe get on a large 2S, or I could set it up to probably have a bit more fun on jump trails. It wouldn't be my first choice for jump trails, but it might be a little bit more geared towards that if I chose to do that. But yeah, the value's all there. The parts you get are banging, even if you buy the current one with the RockShox suspension. So yeah, this would be my entry-level race bike for myself.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. This is definitely the downhill racers, who's behind the consumer direct brand choice right here.
So for more information on YT's 2S Comp, you can head to vitalmtb.com and stay tuned because we are down to just one more bike for this summer of downhill.
Oh, and it's clapped too. The last bike.
Oh, yeah.
It's clapped.
Oh, we gotta put that in there. That's funny.